me, sir.
Welcome back to Stephen King Month, the final episode in our Stephen King Month series. So everyone is talking about this movie, Stephen King's It, and it's defied my expectations. But let's get into the story real quick. It's pretty much how you would expect it. If you've seen the miniseries, you know what this is about. It's about a group of losers who get together and are brought together by one unifying factor, that a demonic character named Pennywise has been stalking them and terrorizing them throughout their time here in Derry. Only this time, it's a modern readaptation of the original source material, placing it from the 50s to the 80s, and making it a little bit more contemporary. And it's through their bond that they've made as members of the Losers Club that they go out and try to find It, who has been trying to terrorize them throughout this entire summer of 1989. This film is good. It surpassed a lot of my expectations. For those of you who know, I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of the marketing for this film. I didn't like Pennywise, the look of Pennywise, but after a while, I started to grow with it. The trailer was less than impressive. I didn't like it. There was the jump scare bullshit at the end, like most of other modern horror films do nowadays. And I'm like, why do studios keep doing this? But surprisingly enough, this movie isn't exactly a jump scare fest. In fact, it's a well thought out, character driven movie. It's not plot-centric, it's character-centric. And while some characters here and there don't get a full development, it's still character-focused on the losers. And that's the heart of the movie, is the losers being terrorized by Pennywise and what they have to bring, what their fears are, what they have to overcome. It truly has a heart. And the actors for the kids, they're great. Especially Finn Wolfhard as Richie Tozer, and he has some really good lines in this movie, and I don't want to spoil it, but he has really good lines. In fact, all these characters have good lines. Even Pennywise has some really good lines in this movie, and the kids feel natural, and the kid actors do a good job, and I hope that they get really good things after this movie, because this movie is going to elevate their stardom for the longest time. The one thing, though, that I kind of wish that other people have brought up already is don't make an It 2 until they've grown 27 years. I wish you could do that, because that would fit very, very well with the story of It, and it would work. It would totally work, and film scholars would just praise this for doing that. To fit well with the book, you also do the same with the movie. It comes back every 27 years. So 27 years later, make an It 2. That focuses on the adults. But apparently we're getting It 2 in 2019, so that's all I have to say. But this movie really comes down to whether or not Pennywise works. Pennywise works in this movie, but I have some caveats with him. He is disturbing. He is creepy. He is a predator. He does play with his food a couple times. But there's a couple sequences where I was like, I don't know if I really buy this Pennywise. But more often than not, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty damn good Pennywise. And Bill Skarsgård does his best. He does really good to do this character right. And he does. As much as I like Tim Curry as Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård just knocks him out of the park. Pennywise in this film actually does stuff that terrorizes the kids. Like, he actually does go after the kids and try to spice them up so that when he actually goes in for the kill, it's a much tastier meal for him. It does earn its hard R in certain places. I feel, though, it needed to be a little bit more violent. Just a tiny bit. Not, full blown, just a tiny bit. I was surprised actually that the budget of this film was around $30 million, which goes to show you that with a caliber of movie like this, which works very well, like thematically and from a filmmaking perspective, it fully works. And it goes to show you that just like in the case with Deadpool, you don't need to have an extravagant budget to make a good movie. Yeah, there are good movies that use extravagant budgets, but, there are certain movies where you need to have the right talent. And I think with the case of the budget for both Deadpool and this movie, it takes the talent to fully work out what the budget's going to be and how to utilize the budget in the best ways. There's a couple things with the CGI, though, that is a little bit, that's going to look dated just a bit in the future. But a lot of what they do with the CG and whatnot really almost looked very real. It really did. But there's a couple things I wish were practical. Like some of the creatures that terrorize the kids, I kind of wish they were practical, characters. Like there's one character that comes from a painting, and you could pretty much do that with practical effects and some contortionist dancers or whatnot. You can totally do that character with makeup, but they do it with kind of a weird CG thing. I don't know. So the CG is not entirely great, but it's still good. And considering the budget for this film, it's kind of a miracle that the CG actually mostly works. The writing for this film also is pretty good, and every character, well, most of the characters in this movie get a pretty good arc, whether it be a small arc or a big arc, and the biggest arc of them all is Bill. Bill is the crux of this entire movie, and you could make an assumption that the reason why Pennywise takes Georgie is to terrorize Bill. There is some evidence to point towards that, which I won't get into, but for minor spoilers, for fans of the book, they might get pissed off at this, but I felt what was a nice change was it taking Georgie and not leaving him out in the street like in the book. Because I think it would have been just like, what you would expect. But I felt like that was a necessary change, and it works thematically with the character of Bill, which again, I can't get into. I can't get into a lot of the more specifics about this movie. But the one area, there's a couple areas though where I think it falters. So here's where my critiques come in. The last third of the movie is, the climax of this movie, the fight with Pennywise. It needed some better cinematography, because a lot of it's either blurry vision or shaky cam, and I couldn't make out what the hell was going on. So, in a way, you probably needed to reshoot that entire scene with a different camera operator and a different layout design. There are a couple lines here and there, which was like, yeah, that's kind of weird. There is a reference to, like, New Kids on the Block, which doesn't make sense. I do think that the first time they used it, it was kind of funny. The second time they did it, it wasn't really funny, and it's like, yeah, we get it. You don't need to do the extravagant thing you did with the poster, but there you go. Pennywise in this film is pretty funny and pretty good. I don't really have many critiques for Pennywise, other than there's like a couple scenes where I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Pennywise is good, but there's just something wrong with Pennywise that I just can't pin down. Maybe if I go watch it again, I'll figure it out. But there's just something off about him that I don't exactly like. That really doesn't work. And then I also felt that like all of these sort of like 80s nostalgia stuff that they put into this movie was a bit much. Even though it was cool to see it, it was just a tiny bit much. Just a tiny bit. But aside from all that, all my little nitpicks and critiques about the film, it's still good. It feels like a jump scare sort of haunted house ride that you would go on. Imagine if Nightmare on Elm Street became a haunted house that you would just walk through. This is one of those movies, and each of the segments with the kids that experience Pennywise interacting with them feels like, a set piece that you would go along as a track ride. And it's a fun thrill ride throughout the entire way. It really is. And, everyone's making the comparison. It's Stand By Me mixed with Nightmare on Elm Street. And I guess they're right. I mean, really looking at the film, you do get the good character development, like with Stand By Me, and you get the nightmarish character that feeds off of your fears, like in Nightmare on Elm Street, which is, I think, a great comparison between the two. It is a good adaptation. Is it great? No. Is it good? Yes. It is a strong, firm adaptation that I feel like is good. The only caveat I have with this movie is that this is part one. I'm still wondering how they're going to do part two, because part two is probably the weakest part of the book. They have to go really hard to make the second part good, because, that's just me. I just have that worry that the second movie will be the one thing that they don't land, and it's not going to be a very satisfying conclusion to the characters. But yeah, all in all, despite all my critiques and whatnot, it's a good movie. Should you go watch it? Yes. Is it scary? No, but it relies more on being disturbing rather than scary. But there's a lot more psychological stuff that happens that I really do enjoy. I will be picking this up on Blu-ray, Steelbook. I do think it's a good movie, despite my critiques. It's way better than the miniseries. It is a good adaptation. There is a lot of things they changed from the first part, but I think it's good enough to be a good adaptation. I'm going to give Stephen King's It 2017 an B+. Thank you all so much for watching these reviews for Stephen King month. We certainly went through a lot of movies this month, and I hope to get back to doing something more traditional on this channel, and maybe a few more special episodes that I might be planning. But as it were, I gotta float these balloons somewhere else. On these balloons are the names of all the Stephen King movies I reviewed this month. And it's so sad to see them go, but sometimes movies have to float too. So we say goodbye for the Stephen King month, and in hopes for a new review series. So, off! Well, I guess that's it. Bye.